And we want advisors to say to their clients, our job is to make sure your retirement plan isn't subject to political football.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Ready, Set, Grow. These are ideas and insights to help advisors grow their practice. I'm Rob Stadler, and our guest this morning is David Duley, co-founder of the Social Security Risk Score. David, how are you this morning?
I'm great. Great to be here.
First, give us your background on what led you to form the Social Security Risk Score.
Yeah, I've basically been an entrepreneur all my life. I was lucky enough to be born in Flint, Michigan, which has sort of seen better times. And a while ago, I was on a flight, and I was actually heading out to Seattle, and a couple behind me was complaining about the direction of America. And they said something like, what happens when Social Security runs out of money? How is that going to affect me? And I looked around, and I think a lot of people look around and say, what is this sort of talk going on in DC and how it might affect them? And I realized that there really wasn't a tool for this couple to take their own unique information and say, wow, if some of these fixes or ideas come to pass that politicians are talking about, how could that affect my retirement income plan, specifically around Social Security? And so we looked in the market and we said, wow, there really isn't a diagnostic tool that helps advisors decipher the chatter going on in DC. And so that was really our opportunity to help take the concerns in the marketplace and put them into a software program that allows advisors to help lead their clients to diagnose, is this something you need to worry about, or is this something you really don't need to worry about?
And we're going to take a deeper dive into that in just a moment. First, I want to talk about Social Security solvency. We keep hearing the trust fund's going to run dry in 10 years. We hear, 2033, 2034, 2035. What is the latest?
Well, all of those have been said, right? And you're going to hear a lot of different numbers, especially this year as an election year. What's fascinating is the latest number. As every year, the Social Security Trust Fund Board of Trustees announces sort of the new solvency date. And last year, a number that the media talked about was 2034. This year, 2035. And our job is to sort of decipher again what is true. And we were sort of shocked when we heard this 2035 number. And so we dove into the data, and we actually said, wow, the number hasn't changed. It's still 2033 when the trust fund related specifically to your Social Security retirement income payments become insolvent, or where the trust fund has a zero balance, and so only money coming in is available to pay out. And so what the government does, and it's kind of tricky, is they combine both the Social Security Retirement Fund with the Social Security Disability Fund, which by law is not permissible. It even says it in the report. And I always say it's sort of akin to me saying, between me and Jeff Bezos, we have $200 billion. And, which is true, but Jeff isn't allowing me to tap into his reserves. And so the number when it comes to the retirement payments is still 2033, less than 10 years out, certainly within that planning horizon, which is why we've seen, survey after survey after survey, outside of inflation, cuts to Social Security is the largest fear in retirement planning in America.
So we have some advisors who come on the radio and they don't want to talk about Social Security. What's your message to them?
Yeah, well, it's the elephant in the room, and for many, many years, there really hasn't been good tools for advisors to talk intelligently about Social Security. Of course, there's the optimization conversation, and advisors worry that talking about Social Security optimization often brings the wrong people to the table, right? People that are just trying to get the most out of Social Security that are heavily dependent on Social Security. But what I would challenge, and what our software is able to do, is it takes Social Security, especially for your target client, kind of the mass affluent client, maybe a dual income household, and it says, what's the present value of that income stream? If I had to replicate Social Security as an income plan, what would that be worth to my client? And what we see all of a sudden is Social Security is worth millions of dollars to a household. And it becomes one of the largest assets that's available to that client, especially around income planning. And when you have the government out there saying, well, we're going to run out of money if we don't have reform, and what does that reform looks like? Tax the rich or go after the rich. Often the people, your clients that have done the right things, that have saved, that have lived within their means, are probably going to be targeted for what some of this reform looks like. And so when you have millions of dollars of exposure, you can talk now intelligently to your clients and say, there's other ways that we can help mitigate, if these reforms come to pass, how we can stabilize your retirement income. So as we say, and we want advisors to say to their clients, our job is to make sure your retirement plan isn't subject to political football. And so we know when advisors talk about Social Security as an asset, and an asset worth protecting, that's a new planning opportunity for them.
What's your greatest fear as far as the future of Social Security goes?
Well, you don't have to look too far to see how dysfunctional the government is, right? And there is really no precedent of the government getting ahead of the problem. If you look at the 1983 Social Security Reform Act, that was sort of last minute. That is when they changed the full retirement age. And so my biggest fear is that many advisors think people at or near retirement will not be affected by reform because it would be political suicide, right? You hear it all the time. There's no way they're going to cut benefits for people near or at retirement. Well, that's not necessarily true. There was a reform in 1977 that affected those age 60 at the time. And so if we believe the government's most likely going to wait to the last minute, the demographics of those that are in charge the last minute, 10 years out, ain't the boomers, right? It's the different younger generations. It's Zs, it's the millennials, who already don't think they're going to get Social Security. And so the whole okay boomer movement, right, is like the boomers have taken enough, right? And so now you're going to have this huge voting block. 80% of the electorate is going to be non-boomers when this reform happens. And so do you think they're going to vote in their highest peak earning years to bail the boomers out? Or are they going to vote, look, if we're going to pay more taxes, we want climate change. We want student loan forgiveness. We want free child health care. We want free college. Those are the priorities of those generations who don't believe they're going to get Social Security in the first place. So what I fear is advisors are downplaying the risk. I've talked to people that have sat on the board of the Social Security Administration, former, head commissioner of it, and their thoughts are changing. Like, the dysfunction is so great, we're going to wait until the last minute that those clients that have done the right thing will be exposed to some sort of fix, whether that is reduction of benefits, higher taxes, or a combination of both.
So the Social Security risk score, what is it?
Yeah, it's really just a diagnostic tool that takes an individual's unique set of circumstances, right? You hear often policy as it relates to any government program, very broad swath of like, this is what could happen, here's who may be affected. But individuals and advisors have never had a tool that says you're going to be affected based on if this law passes. And so what the software does is allows you to have a new conversation with your clients and say, let's answer these 15, 18 questions and say, what's happened in the past? Would you have been affected by Social Security reform? What are some of the ideas being proposed in the future? And is this something that we need to plan around? Is this something that you might be in the crosshairs of? You're already hearing the chatter of the rich need to pay their fair share, right? The rich need to pay more. But we don't have to look very far back. We can look back 4 years ago during COVID on what was rich. If you remember the COVID stimulus checks, they started means testing out at $75,000 of income, right? And up to $100,000, then you got no COVID stimulus check. A lot of people were surprised to find out that that was rich, right? And so you already see means testing when it comes to Medicare premium. And so there's all these different avenues that advisors need help deciphering because their clients are hearing about it in the news. The software really helps them give concrete examples on, yes, Mr. and Mrs. Client, this is something we need to work and plan for. You could be targeted by potential reforms, or no, this is something that, based on current ideas, we don't need to worry about. But it's like a credit score. It's something that you need to engage every year because the rules change every year, right? The ideas change every year. The politicians change every year. And it allows you to have these new conversations, these new planning conversations with your clients. And if your client has basically $2.5 million or less of retirement savings, Social Security is going to play a major role. And that's shocking to a lot of advisors, just because the lifetime value of that annuity payment, which also has cost of living adjustments, is exceptionally valuable. And so, again, the software allows the advisors to engage in a new conversation. And what I say is sort of we're at the top of the first inning with the largest retirement income story of the next decade. And that is what is going to happen to Social Security.
So the risk score, this diagnostic tool spits out a number. What does that number briefly represent?
Yeah, that number would take you, for example, and say what is your risk level to peers of your same age and demographic, right? And it says, based on your savings, your income, your age, are you at a higher probability or a lower probability of being affected by reform? That's one of the things. Then what it does is it takes risk factors, just like a credit score. When you get a credit report and it says, here are your 3 risk factors, the Social Security risk score will define, here are the things you need to pay attention to. Here are the things about your profile that the government might say, interesting, you can afford a means test. Or you're going to live long enough to see reform that could affect you. And then what it does is it puts into real dollars what that reform could look like and how it could impact your retirement plan. So here's the value, lifetime value of those Social Security payments. If we take the government at its word and 2033 rolls around and 21% of your Social Security goes away, how does that affect your income plan? And how do we fill that gap now? It's sort of like knowing the train's coming down the track. We can hear the whistle. We have time to plan. So let's just plan. And I repeat this often, but I think it really resonates with people. People are tired of their retirement income plan being subject to political football. You're going to hear it on the news. You're going to hear it in debates. This person's going to take away your Social Security. This person's going to make you work longer. Wouldn't it be nice to just not care about those things?
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that's the huge opportunity. Hundreds of millions of dollars of free marketing is going to happen every year for the next 10 or 15 years around this idea. Financial advisors have this unique opportunity. It's almost like a Y2K moment, right? To step in and provide calm and to provide leadership and solutions to this retirement income pandemic that's going to come.
So how can advisors integrate the Social Security risk score in their practice? Who do they need to talk to?
Yeah, well, first they should reach out to their impact VP. They can express interest, and then we have sort of monthly onboarding sessions that we can set up to onboard them, to teach them all the tools and methodology to use the Social Security risk score to not only sell deeper within their current book of business, but to really attract new customers as well, because people are worried about what's going on and they want that fear quantified somehow. We sort of all want a blood test to see what our cholesterol level is. It's similar. You want to know. And to date, there hasn't been a system that allows people to know what's their risk exposure around these things. And so with that data and with this new tool, we find it as a unique new engagement touch point. Again, we've seen advisors just sell way deeper into their current book of business, sort of those clients that are like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you I had this extra $200,000, $300,000 over here. But now that you're addressing my concerns and fears around Social Security, maybe we can move it over and there's some solutions in the marketplace, really for the first time ever, that specifically address what could happen with Social Security and its potential shortfall.
David Duley, thanks for joining us. And learn more about how the Social Security Risk Score Analyzer can help your practice. Just like and subscribe, and make sure you click the link below.